Hello and welcome to the Cite View on Asake Online. My name is Lesley Moyo. In today's edition of the program, I'm joined by the president of the Nationalists Alliance Party, that is Mr. Divine Mhambi-Hove. And we're here to discuss about the state of opposition politics in Zimbabwe, as well as the growing debate around the possible extension of President Mnangagwa's term come 2028, and also the democratic space in Zimbabwe as it is now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to have me here.
Let's start with the how would you assess the current state of opposition politics in Zimbabwe, especially post the 2023 elections?
Well, I think we are one of the few people that started raising concern about the what I would call the arrangement that started to emerge post even before 2023. If you recall that we started to raise alarm about the raise of participation fees, nomination fees, which we eventually went to court about. We saw that as a way of really diminishing the space, the democratic space of the ability to participate in politics. And that was a big signal for us. And we have then seen that, obviously, out of that, the dwindling of that ability for people to oppose it, as it were, or to challenge government, or to be in the alternative parties. It has been made worse, obviously, by the recalls that followed and literally, in my view, resulted in total breakdown of that space.
And obviously, that has affected citizens because they've grown weary of this opposition disunity.
Yes.
Maybe as NAP, what are some of the attempts that you're doing to try and galvanize citizens? Obviously, looking ahead to the 2028 elections, as per the constitution of the country.
Well, it's a long shot, really, if you look at what has happened over the past few years. And I must say, at this point, what is making it actually more worrisome is now the use of money, the famous term being Zvigananda that you are hearing about, how money is now being used as a tool to entice and silence people or to buy views and stuff like that, such that the people that are really in control of financial abilities are now using that. So it is really a difficult short, in which we foresaw many years ago, to say, as long as we now start using money as a tool to silence and sideline people, it becomes hard. But look, we cannot give up. We keep doing what we can. The thing that we did the last time was go to court. I do not know where it leaves us now. There's nothing else that we can do except keep engaging people, talking to people, campaigning in any platform that we can, social media and everything else, hoping that it works out. But really, it's a long shot. It's becoming more and more difficult to speak with one voice, to air views, because people are now, in my view, focusing on what goes into their stomach over and above the principle of politics.
You speak about the use of money, and I think one thing that came into my mind is, would they be able to buy everyone? Because obviously, maybe they're now targeting personalities, people who are out there in the public. But obviously, there are 5 or so million Zimbabweans who are registered to vote.
I think the objective is not to buy everyone from the way that we see it, but is to create an expectation. Because if you've got 5 million people and you bless 20,000 people, it means the other 4.8 something million become the expectants of that receiving ability. And so it creates an indirect loyalty, an indirect expectation. You know, our economy is not doing very well. That's a fact. And many people, if you look at the salaries that people are getting, generally the average salary, if you jump from that salary or from being unemployed to owning a Raptor or getting 20,000 for fuel, 100,000 in some cases, I mean, you begin to say, am I the next person? What can I do? I actually know that some people in their private spaces are saying, what can I do, this unique thing that will make me stand out and be the next beneficiary? This comes after the famous Sapatina guy.
Yes.
He thought he was just making a video, and the next thing he's got money. There's another guy who put honey on himself. The next thing he's got money. So there is no specific formula as to how you can access this gift, as it were. It then creates that anticipation. So they may not necessarily be targeting everyone, as it were, but that expectation is very important. But also, it is now beyond doubt that they are really loaded with money. If you look at the money that has been spent over the few months, just the few months alone, it's millions of dollars. So the ability is really there. And this is what we foresaw when that issue of fees came into play, to say, how can a party be expected to raise somewhere in the range of $250,000 just to register? And so you can see the frustration that has happened with opposition politics. If you look at by-elections that are coming up, it doesn't really make sense to pay $1,000 just to go into a by-election. So you see this boycott, this general inability to participate, as it were.
Yeah. Then what can opposition parties do? Because I know in previous elections there've been attempts around coalitions. Some have worked to some extent, some have collapsed. But looking at the bigger fight that is coming, or you paint a picture where this monster continues to grow and grow and grow, and we have this small David that is trying to slay Goliath. But with these little resources that are there, especially for opposition parties, what can be done really to try and stand against this, especially this attempt to amend the constitution that is.
Well, the little hope that we have is that eventually people come to their senses. No matter how ridiculous something is, people come to their senses. If you look at some of the ways in which money is being used to entice or to reward loyalty to, because they've made it clear it's a loyalty to a certain direction of thought. But it also inversely creates people to think and say, is this worth it? Is this how we want the nation to go? Is this the way that the resources of the country can be used? And it creates then a platform where we have the ability now to reason with people that are willing to have that understanding, to say, instead of somebody getting a raptor, whilst we know that there is a shortage of medication in some hospitals, whilst we know that I was in a certain hospital the other time, the wheelchairs did not have proper equipment for them to functionally work. So if you have been to a hospital, if you are in a situation that really affects you directly, and then you get to hear of something like that, it becomes hard to convince you that this is responsibility. You will see the irresponsibility out of it. And that is where the opposition politics need to take advantage of that space, to keep knocking that door, to say our country could be in a better space. We can use our resources in a better space than this that we are seeing. So yes, it's not going to be, like I said, a walk in the park, because when you're talking money, it's the same concept with what they call neocolonialism. If you look at neocolonialism, it's the use of money really to suppress the so-called independent countries. So we see this fashion again coming out, and it's not the easiest of things to fight, but look, we cannot give up. We have to keep speaking, we have to keep talking, and hopefully it gets to the ears of some people.
But the other argument has always been that opposition parties in Zimbabwe, they are more reactionary, because we are always waiting to whatever ZANU-PF is doing,
Yes.
Whether through press statements, press conferences. But what is really that? Is there really a tangible strategy that opposition parties can come up with to try and push back?
We have always been different in a way that even we identify ourselves as a party. If you look at our track record, we have not been comfortable being identified as an opposition political party, because it creates an expectation that you are supposed to oppose with a certain dramatic manner all the time. We have ideologically positioned ourselves and defined ourselves as a contesting party. Now, it becomes very relevant, especially at this moment, to say whatever then we do is in line with the thought of a contest. So if you look at this 2030 thing that is happening now, our view is that it is affecting the contestation space. So it can be looked at in three dimensions. Number one, it's attempting to change the contestation period from 5 years to 7 years, which naturally affects the frequency of the contests. So it then gives us the right to challenge or to share a thought to say, you are changing the contestation rules as a party. Yet the contestation is not an internal thing. It's a national thing. The contest is between political players. So you cannot unilaterally adjust the contestation rules, the contestation dimensions unilaterally. So it gives us that ability now to say, how do we react to this thing that is particularly affecting contestation? It's different from being an opposition where you are now known for, like you said, press conferences and just opposing. And then people eventually start to get tired. Oh, these guys, they're just always opposing. We want to take a direction of giving facts, knowledge and understanding of why we take the direction that we do. And from that, we believe we can build a foundation of knowledge to say these guys, what they are saying, what they are contesting about is in line with their ideology. So without discrediting any political party now, one of the problems that opposition political parties have faced is this threat to do something and it doesn't happen. This threat to go into the streets and people don't go. This threat to boycott and people don't boycott. So eventually, in the 5th call, the 6th call, the 10th call, people will lose hope and say, nah, this does not work. So we want to address this matter in an academic, factual, historical position to say, let's put out the facts and discuss why we're taking this position from an ideological and factual point of view. And we believe that that may work for us.
Obviously, you have touched a bit on the so-called 2030 agenda, attempts to amend the constitution in favor of the incumbent, that is President Mnangagwa, to extend the term.
Yeah.
What's your view on that? And there's been also the blocking of press conferences by some political actors who are trying to react to that resolution that came from the ZANU-PF conference. Maybe as NAP, first of all, what is your take on that?
I think we've already taken a position. We had a press conference recently. Mm-hmm. There are many avenues in which we are responding to this. The first one being that if you look at the historical background of this country, which has not also been interpreted properly, Zimbabwe is a country that was, in the pure sense, created all the way from the BSAC. So the Zimbabwe that we call Zimbabwe today, which we say is an independent nation, gets its independence from Britain. So Britain created a country and it became a colony. And then Britain gives independence to that country to govern and run itself. So it's a whole lot of long history. But there are tools and instruments that they were using in between, which lead to the culmination of a constitution. If you look at 1923, the first constitution comes into play. There were rules and regulations that they were following. The nationalists, the Nkomos, the Mugabes, come into play around 1950 there to want to participate in that kind of political arrangement. It's a different political arrangement from the ones that Lobengula and Chaka were using. So I always use this example. If Lobengula would wake up today and hear that there are elections, you would say, I guess we are what is elections? Yeah. What is an MP? What is a councillor? Mm-hmm. So our forebearers ushered us into a country bound by rules, because even the BSAC was bound by rules. Mm-hmm. Even the first colonialists were operating under some kind of a constitution and rules. And this is what our nationalists then oppose, to say, you can't govern us if you don't allow us to vote. You can't govern us if you don't allow us to be part of the governance structure. It is only when Ian Smith was resisting that the war emanated. So it must be clear the war was not about getting independence from Britain, because Britain was willing to give the independence to Rhodesia. It had already given independence to Zambia and all the other countries without even a war. But Ian Smith was refusing to recognize that demand from Britain to say, black majority rule first. So our nationalist parties ushered us into this constitutional framework. They are the ones that endorsed it, as it were. And that's what we became accustomed to. So everybody's got access to the Constitution. They read it. Everybody has the right to read the Constitution. We read the Constitution. It is the law. And everybody has the ability to then interpret it in the way that they feel is what it means. If there is a dispute about interpretation, that is why we have got the courts. So based on that, we feel that we have to be consistent and abide by the rule of law as the nationalists endorse that governance structure, that political framework. But we also know that in the event that there is a discord in terms of interpretation, we are free to approach the courts. So our view is, from our reading the Constitution, it's very clear that one, we have to abide to that Constitution because it binds every Zimbabwean. It's the supreme law. But it also is very clear that it cannot benefit the incumbent. So this is not a personal thing, or it's not just opposing, it's the law. That's how we interpret it, that's how we understand it. But be that as it may, we know that people cannot be bound by a law if they now feel that it's not proper for them. There is no universal law that says the law that you make should eternally and perpetually bind you. You may decide to change the law if you feel this law is no longer good for us. But that becomes a national position. It cannot be a party position. So for whatever reason that ZANU-PF thinks that they need to extend the Constitution in terms of presidential limits, they must realize that is no longer a party sphere. It's now a national sphere. Why? Because there's a history of how the people of Zimbabwe decide to get to these two terms. There is logic to that. There is a desire and aspiration which led them to that. So our position is clear. It's the rule of law. It's the desire of people. It's a national position. It cannot be unilateral, and it's challengeable in court. That's our view. So we become very worried when the democratic space is now being sort of like squandered. We hear that there were bombings that took place. We hear that a press conference was blocked. These are people of Zimbabwe trying to express that thought, to say the area that you want to tamper around with is a very sensitive area of national interest, and people should be able to speak freely. What concerns me the most is that the president himself has said he's a constitutionalist, so he must understand what is happening on the ground. But secondly, I'm sure you'll be aware that I was a part of Pollard. One of the things that the president would say when we were in Pollard is that people are free to criticize. Let them criticize as much as they want. It's a democratic space. But when this criticism comes out and we see state agents coming out to repress and block and all these things happening, it becomes questionable as to the sincerity of what the president meant when he said those two things, that I'm a constitutionalist and that I'm very comfortable with people criticizing government.
And you speak about how it will affect. You spoke about that your NAP is a contesting party, and now that right to participate, let's say in the next elections, will be affected.
Yes.
But I think it goes just beyond political parties. Looking at, for instance, if there's a first-time voter,
yes,
that was looking forward to vote in the next elections,
yes,
they will no longer. So how can then citizens come together to try and push back against this? Because it does not only affect political parties' right to participate in national elections, but also citizens are also affected.
Yes,
one way or the other.
I think what's important for the nation is to get the context correct. One of the things that we miss as a nation is to express the context. I think it will be a miscarriage of natural processes or legal processes if people would just focus on contesting, querying this just for the sake of doing it, without putting the proper context in place. I like what you've just said, to say there's an eager voter who wants to vote at 18. Now they would vote at 20. They've been denied some 2 years. So that position must be clearly knocked into the people's thoughts, to say this is what you are doing. It's beyond politics. It's also civic in a manner, in a way. That is what I wish that people could do, to bring the logic, to bring the facts out, to say, how does this thing affect us? I think when that happens, we will cease to have this syndrome that I get very worried about, whereby people are lobbied into taking a position without understanding. I'll give you an example of the anti-sanctions day. People are just gathered to say, let's protest against sanctions. And then you go to individual people and you say, why are you protesting? What are sanctions? They don't even know what are sanctions. So we need to approach this thing with a different point of view, because this is a very fundamental aspect. Put the facts, put the knowledge, put the legal framework clearly before the people, so that even those people who could have been lobbied into supporting it will begin to say, but no, this does not make sense. I mean, this does not add up. Why are we changing this? We had a constitution that allowed a president to be re-elected over and over again. Why did we move to 2 terms? So why are we changing it now? So these are the kind of thoughts that we have to say we need to continue to educate people about this thing. It cannot be taken as just any opposing position, but properly handled academically, historically, and legally.
But the events that took place, the Arson attack at Surface Trust and the blocking of the press conferences, would you say maybe it's a sign of how far these guys are willing to go in terms of ensuring that their plan comes to fruition? Because obviously if they block people from speaking out freely, or coalescing around this idea of resisting this attempt to amend the constitution, it gives them that free rein to do as they please.
I think it would be a mistake for people to not see the signal. Yesterday's events was, in my view, actually a secondary signal. The signal started coming back way back. If you've got party officials that will come out at a conference and openly say a resolution and openly say they are directing government and parliament towards working towards it, that's a signal enough. I want to believe that people should not wait until the last minute to appreciate the determination which ZANU-PF has in amending that constitution. They have said it openly. They have said it. So there is no other signal. There is no other way to look at it except to see what they have said. So all these things that are happening now and after that conference are just an addition to the determination which they already have to make sure this succeeds. I've always said to people, political parties, yes, take different directions from time to time, but I don't think they take directions without also them getting a signal from their leadership. So when you see the general populace of the party taking a certain direction, they are probably sure that the leadership is okay with it. And once the leadership is okay with it, it's all forces out to make sure that position is achieved.
But also, do you foresee a united opposition movement? I'm asking this because I'm looking at this. You did touch on it earlier to say we have elected officials, even those who are in the opposition who are in parliament. But obviously now there've been talks of we've had some of them even supporting the extension of President Mnangagwa's term. But wouldn't a united opposition really offer that resistance that
I think, like I said, the important thing is to realize that this is an attempt to change the contestation rules. So all people or all institutions or all formations that are political in nature, to the extent of contesting, are affected. So now the decision is, are you comfortable with this adjustment or not? And it follows logically that whoever feels uncomfortable, because we must not take the assumption, like you said, that all political players are not okay with it. Like you've heard already some opposition political parties, as it were, endorsing it. But what I'm saying is, if it then follows that there are people that are not agreeable to it, it only makes sense for them to come together and speak with one voice, especially looking at the fact that the contestation rules, the ground level for contesting has been changed or is being attempted to be changed. So they don't have a choice, really. contesting parties, opposition political parties, don't have a choice except to speak with one voice if they disagree with the position of that 5-year term being changed.
Then maybe let's look ahead at, obviously, you say that you are a contesting party and with the aspirations to govern the country. What would you say are some of the key priorities that you would take as a party or as a government to one, especially looking at the economy in terms of stabilizing the economy and getting that confidence back in the country?
Well, if you give me enough time, because most of the positions that political parties take are not without the good explanation as to why we take a certain position. Remember, I said it's ideological, it's historical. One of the key differences that we have with other political parties is understanding the need to have parliament independent. So if you look at what's happening in our country now, it's very difficult to expect parliament to stand with the people because even the rules are designed that it doesn't. We've got what is called a chief whip in parliament, whose job is to direct people into a certain political party position, not the people position. We've got ministers who are appointed from parliamentarians. So our view as a party is that the first thing that we need to push for is to make parliament independent by taking a bold position that all members of parliament should be non-political. Members of parliament should be elected from their constituencies by virtue of their desire to represent that constituency, not the party. And Eswatini already does that. It's got a different system, of course. It's a monarchical one. But their parliament is non-political. You cannot be an MP if you are openly known or a member of a certain political party. You can't represent people because your interests will be warded off. And this is what makes us different, because we do not have an intention to field any members of parliament as a party, because that's not our institution. And that is what has led to parliament not representing people. In fact, one of the tools that ZANU-PF will use now is parliament, to say we've got the 2/3 majority. And they use it to do whatever they want. Actually, they could amend the constitution now by virtue of that 2/3 majority. That is why we say parliament should be independent. So one of the things that we'll look at is advocate for a law that totally disbands members of parliament being partisan. The other thing is to do with the restitution. If you look at the formation of this country from a commercial point of view, it was a company business sort of that created the country. Even though it became self-governed, the commercial aspect was never addressed. But the people that were affected, the communal households that were displaced and moved, were never then compensated for that displacement. So we've got a commercial activity that is taking place, Britain getting money out of it, white settlers getting money out of it, becoming very rich at the expense of communal households. When independence came, it is our ideological view that all those homesteads should have been compensated. And this is one of the things that we will be campaigning for in our manifesto. And the question always comes to say, where will you get the money to compensate all the communal homesteads? And I like this question these days because we can see the amount of money that is being splashed all over. Our country has got the resources. So it's no longer a burden for us to prove to people that it is possible to compensate all those households. But from an economic point of view, we have been ushered into a commercial space with the majority of the population being communal households. We want to advocate a policy where agriculture is shared. You know, when the white farmers took over the farms, they were taking communal lands. When independence came, it was only logical that black people should at least get a space in that agricultural activity. But you find black people taking over farms to operate them individually. What do the communities get? Not much. So we want to advocate for communal farms for communities. We want to have agriculture shared. And the example that I always give is having done a national consensus, we must agree who does what crop on what size of land. You can't have a small holder of a piece of land competing with Goddard. You are all doing tomatoes. I'm doing cabbages. Goddard is doing cabbages. Goddard is on 500 hectares of land. I am on a half hectare. And you expect us to compete fairly. So we want to subdivide agriculture such that certain households are permitted by law to have certain agricultural activities. And certain sizes of farms are not permitted by law to uptake certain farming activities. That's one of the commercial arrangements. But then the issue of investors is very key. Investors need to find a comfortable space to come and invest in our country. This is what creates jobs. This is what reduces unemployment, because some of these firms already have the ability to come and set up base. You know, Africa has got a very good economic advantage in terms of operating costs. Just by looking at salary alone, Africa has got a very good competitive advantage. In fact, let me tell you what's happening in the insurance industry. In Europe, they are employing people from South Africa. They set up call centers in South Africa, but for insurance companies operating overseas. So what happens is, if you dial a call in Europe, the call is received in South Africa, and you don't even realize it. And you start to speak to somebody in South Africa to attend to your insurance issue in the UK or in Europe. Why? Because they've realized that the labor in South Africa is cheaper than setting up a call center in Europe. So why not just allow people that have got investment capabilities to come and physically invest in South Africa? One of the things that the government of Botswana is pursuing is also noble: investment by citizenship. You know, allow a certain type of citizenship to be granted to people that can invest and set up businesses. These are the policies that we'll be pushing for. But I must say, over and above this, we need to mature out of understanding what is citizenship. Because citizenship is purely that: citizenship by birth, by registration, or by naturalization. We still need to come out of this thought that the only citizens of Zimbabwe are black people. This is a mindset that we must grow out of. A citizen is a citizen. If they qualify by the law, they must be allowed to operate. If a white person is doing well by setting up a company in Zimbabwe, it is contributing to the GDP of the country. It is contributing to the income of the country, tax and all that. We now need to balance and say, how do we involve the ordinary Zimbabweans into it? Directorship, management. Let the locals manage. Let the locals be directors, because they've got the capabilities. One of the things about Zimbabwe is we now have a generally well-educated population. That should not be a problem. So those are some of the few policies that we'll be pushing for. But the key one being independence of parliament, sharing of agriculture, and compensation of communal homesteads.
Thank you so much, Mr. Owe, for taking time to speak to us. I know we would have loved to to speak more on the issues that you have raised,
Yes.
but obviously, because time won't allow us, hopefully we'll have another sit down soon to further our discussion.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Cite View today. My guest was Mr. Mhambi-Hove, who is the president of the Nationalists Alliance Party, and he says that their party, they are contesting party, and we're speaking mostly about the state of opposition politics in Zimbabwe. We're looking at the attempts by the ruling ZANU-PF to extend President Mnangagwa's term of office, as well as the general democratic space in Zimbabwe. Let's meet again in the next edition of the program. My name is Lesley Moyo.